He wasn't looking for trouble. But when a black estate car tried to leave Windsor without clearance, and the Royal Guard spotted Princess Charlotte's backpack in the back seat with no child in sight, he moved. No one answered his questions. Camilla said it was private family business. Then he heard the thud, then the second, and that's when he walked to the back of the car, placed his hand on the trunk and forced it open. What he found inside: Princess Charlotte, hog-tied, gagged, eyes wide with fear. Before we show you the exact moment the guard unlocked the boot, and the words Charlotte whispered once the tape came off, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from, tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell icon, because this wasn't protocol, it was abduction, and he stopped it. It was late afternoon at Windsor, the kind of overcast stillness that made the stone walls hum with silence. Nothing ceremonial was scheduled, no press, no public, just the soft shuffle of valets and the muted rotation of guards finishing shift change. Sergeant Rowan Hale stood near the west courtyard arch, scanning the perimeter with the quiet precision that had become second nature after 15 years in uniform. He wasn't expecting anything unusual. The sky had dulled into pale grey, birds low against the hedge line. It should have been another routine hour. Then he saw it. A dark grey estate car, newer model, gleaming panels, diplomatic tint, idling at the far end of the inner service lane. That vehicle wasn't listed on today's movement chart. Hale knew this because he'd memorized every number on the roster an hour ago. It hadn't come through the outer gate with royal convoy clearance. No escort vehicle, no front runner, just there, alone. His eyes narrowed. There was no crest on the hood, no temporary tag on the dashboard, just a faint, waxy imprint where something official-looking had been peeled away. Hale stepped forward, casually, without posture shift, just enough to cut a diagonal angle toward the vehicle. He caught a glimpse through the rear side window and froze. There, slumped against the back seat cushion, was a small, bright pink rucksack. The same model he'd seen dozens of times on Princess Charlotte's shoulder during morning arrivals at Kensington. It was unmistakable, faded unicorn patch near the zipper, one frayed strap where she liked to swing it by her fingers. But the seat beside it was empty. No child, no security detail, no seat belt clipped across the bag. His stomach tightened. Charlotte wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Windsor today. She was listed under private instruction at Kensington with no authorised movements. If she were being transported, it would be logged, tracked, escorted. He shifted again. In the driver's seat sat a man in a dark overcoat, head turned slightly away, posture too rigid, eyes fixed forward. Hale recognised the shape of the woman seated behind him even before she turned. Queen Camilla, jaw high, shoulders tight, not reading, not working, just sitting. Still. She didn't glance out, didn't acknowledge the checkpoint, didn't behave like someone waiting for clearance. And Charlotte was nowhere to be seen. Hale took another step and examined the glass more closely. There was a scuff on the inside panel, the kind made by a child's shoe when kicking gently, absently, against the door during long rides. Beneath it, a smaller smear, like the print of a palm dragged along the glass. Thin, faint. He looked at the bag again, slumped, forgotten, or hidden in plain sight. His hand dropped to his side radio. Not activated, not yet, just resting, just ready. Something was wrong, not incorrect, not unusual, wrong. And Sergeant Hale had learned, painfully, quietly, that when something felt like this, it wasn't just odd protocol, it was danger. He straightened his spine and walked forward. Hale reached the front quarter panel of the estate car and paused with quiet deliberation. His eyes swept the stone archway overhead, checking for movement. No aids, no press. He shifted slightly to the left and tapped once on the driver's window. The man flinched. That told Hale more than 1,000 words. The glass lowered halfway. The driver, mid-50s, clean-shaven royal staff lanyard, barely visible beneath his collar, avoided eye contact. "Destination?" Hale asked, keeping his voice even. The man cleared his throat. "Private family travel. No stop-ins." "Passenger manifest?" The man hesitated. "Lady Clarence, household override." Hale arched a brow. "There is no Lady Clarence in today's protocol chart. Who exactly—" The rear window lowered a few inches. Camilla's face appeared, sharp and composed. "That won't be necessary, Sergeant. This is a personal movement. Kindly allow it." Hale gave a slight nod, but didn't step back. "Ma'am, may I ask, where is Princess Charlotte?" Camilla didn't blink. "She's fine." It was the way she said it, flat, cold, conclusive, that made every hair on the back of his neck rise. "She's not visible in the vehicle, ma'am." Camilla's eyes narrowed. "And that concerns you?" He didn't answer. His eyes dropped back to the pink bag, still unmoved. No indication of ownership, no child reaching for it, no voice calling from within. Just then, the sound, faint, internal, a low, soft thud from the rear of the vehicle, like something or someone shifting weight against metal. It was not the sound of cargo. It was deliberate, muffled, alive. Hale straightened just slightly. Another noise, this one clearer, a dull, padded thump. He looked directly at Camilla. "I'll need to inspect the trunk." Her expression didn't change, but the driver's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. "That won't be necessary," Camilla said again. "Then where is the princess, ma'am?" Silence. Camilla raised the window without answering. Hale didn't move. He stepped backwards slowly, his face unreadable, and walked calmly toward the rear of the car. The second knock came just as he reached the rear wheel well, slightly louder this time. Timed. Not panic. Not chaos. A signal. He turned his body slightly, keeping his right side toward the trunk, and brought his hand to his radio, this time pressing the silent alert trigger. One buzz, then another. Across the yard, Corporal Mason moved from his perimeter sweep, casual but alert, drifting toward the vehicle without drawing attention. Inside the car, everything had gone still. Hale knelt under the guise of inspecting the license plate bracket. He placed one palm gently on the boot. Then came a third thud, and what sounded terrifyingly like a small, sharp breath. It wasn't protocol anymore. It was presence. And something inside that trunk was trying to say, "Help me." Rowan Hale rose slowly from his inspection crouch, every movement measured now, every instinct sharpened to a narrow point. The third sound from the boot had not been accidental. It had rhythm. It had intention. And beneath it, another sound. The faintest, most strained trace of breath, like someone forcing air through a barrier. Hale stepped away from the rear wheel and walked directly toward Camilla's door without preamble. No attempt at diplomacy, no softening of language. "You will unlock the boot. Now!" Camilla's head snapped toward him sharply for the first time, her composure visibly tightening. "That is not your concern," she said, crisp and precise. "You're operating outside your remit." Hale didn't blink. "You're traveling with a minor royal whose presence has not been declared, logged, or visually confirmed. I'm activating immediate inspection." Her eyes dropped briefly to the dashboard, then returned to him with a cool, warning stare. "Step away from this vehicle, Sergeant." He held her gaze steadily. "If the princess is in that boot and restrained, this car becomes a crime scene." That did it. A thin, restrained smile touched her lips, a calculated show of defiance. "You will regret those words." Hale took one step back, not in retreat, but to reposition, to give the signal, a barely visible motion of his fingers behind his thigh. Across the courtyard, Mason shifted into alert posture, drawing 2 additional guards into a slow perimeter without drawing attention. No sirens, no raised voices, just silent readiness. Hale turned on his heel and walked toward the trunk again, his calm now absolute. Behind him, the driver cracked his door nervously, as though uncertain whether he should flee or remain. Camilla stepped out. Her heels hit the stones sharply as she moved to intercept, her voice lowering into a coiled, dangerous edge. "You are embarrassing yourself, Sergeant." He didn't answer. She angled her body in front of him, blocking access to the boot. He stopped a single pace away. "You will move." She didn't. "I will not allow this absurd spectacle to—" Another muffled thump came from behind them. This one was not controlled. This one was frantic. A small, restrained sound. Urgent. Desperate. Cut through the courtyard air. Hale's jaw tightened. He stepped sideways, bypassing Camilla entirely. Her voice hardened. "Do not touch that boot." He placed one gloved hand on the seam of the trunk and felt the faint vibration beneath it. Faint, but unmistakable. Alive. Somewhere inside, a child was reacting to his presence. "Open it," he said, turning his head slightly toward Mason, who was already stepping forward. Camilla's composure cracked at the edges. "You don't know what you're doing." But Hale did know. He knew exactly what he was about to find. And whatever it was no longer subject to anyone's permission. Sergeant Rowan Hale didn't raise his voice. He didn't shift his stance. He simply moved around the rear of the estate car with the quiet certainty of a man who knew two things with absolute clarity. The child was inside, and no one was going to stop him from opening that trunk. Camilla moved too. The second she saw his hand reach toward the boot seam, she flung the door open and stepped out, heels sharp on the stone. Her coat flared behind her like a stage curtain, her face pale beneath the layers of calculation and cosmetics. "You will not open that trunk," she hissed, positioning herself directly between him and the latch. "This is your final warning." But Hale didn't stop. He took one step closer, then another, until there was less than a foot between them. Not aggressive, not threatening, just immovable. Her breath quickened, her hands clenched at her sides. "You're making a grave mistake," he replied with nothing but silence. And then it came again, a sound from the boot, but not like before. This one was violent, a slam against the interior metal, and this time the unmistakable sound of a child's whimper behind thick tape. The world snapped into razor focus. Hale's voice didn't rise, but it carried across the courtyard like a blade. "Open it." Corporal Mason stepped forward instantly, sidestepping Camilla's outstretched arm as if brushing past a low-hanging branch. He didn't ask permission, didn't hesitate, just produced a slim tool from his belt, slipped it beneath the edge of the trunk seam, and twisted. There was a click, then a groan. The boot lifted. What they saw stopped every breath in the courtyard. Princess Charlotte was curled on her seat, wedged into the corner of the compartment like cargo. Her wrists were tied behind her back with nylon cord, her ankles bound. A rope linked the two, arching her small frame in a restrained bend. Her mouth was sealed shut with a strip of grey duct tape. She wasn't unconscious. She wasn't thrashing. She was awake. Her eyes, wide, glassy, locked directly on Hale, said everything she couldn't. For a moment no one moved. No one spoke. Then Hale stepped forward, his movements slow, deliberate, measured to the second. He crouched beside her and spoke through clenched control. "You're safe. I'm here. I'm going to get you out." He reached for his blade, not his ceremonial sword, but the short, curved emergency cutter issued for seatbelts and cord. One quick stroke, then another. The ropes dropped away. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just let herself fall forward into his arms and held on. Behind him, Camilla whispered, "She needed discipline." And Hale, still on one knee, the child pressed against his chest, looked up, voice barely audible. "You call this discipline?" Charlotte's voice, muffled and dry, finally came out in a whisper through the rawness of her throat. "She said I humiliated her. She told me I had to learn to be quiet." The words landed harder than the sight itself, and Hale knew this wasn't about protocol anymore, this was punishment, and it had just ended. Rowan Hale remained on one knee, his arms steady around Charlotte's small frame, shielding her from the view behind him as much as his uniform and shoulder could allow. He didn't rush her. He didn't pull her free. He let her hold on. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, shock more than panic. The kind of quiet that followed something she hadn't yet fully understood herself. "It's all right," he murmured, keeping his voice low enough that no one else could reach it. "You're out now. You don't need to be brave anymore." She nodded, faintly, though her body hadn't stopped trembling. Behind them no one spoke. Not the driver, not the guards, not Camilla. The silence had teeth. Hale slowly shifted, lifting Charlotte into a more stable position, angling his back between her and the open vehicle so no curious glance could land on her face. He pressed one hand gently against the back of her head to block the wind and the cold. Camilla's voice broke through at last, sharp and brittle. She overreacted. Hale didn't look at her. "She required discipline," Camilla continued. "She defied me publicly last week, humiliated me in front of household staff. A royal child cannot be allowed to think she chooses when to behave." Charlotte's fingers tightened in Hale's sleeve. "She said I had to be quiet for a while," she whispered weakly, still not looking back. "That if I cried, I'd stay longer." Hale's jaw hardened. He stood slowly, keeping her covered with his coat as Mason stepped closer, already holding a thermal blanket. Without turning, Hale nodded once. Mason wrapped it around Charlotte with care. No rush, just calm, assured, gentle. Camilla folded her arms tightly. "You're turning this into spectacle." "No," Hale replied at last, his voice steady but cold. "You did that the moment you treated a child like property." Her lips twitched. "And you," she snapped, "are a soldier, not a judge." His answer didn't rise to meet her venom. "I am neither," he said. "I am protection." Charlotte shifted slightly against his shoulder, her voice barely audible again. "Am I in trouble?" His expression softened for just a second as he glanced down. "No, Your Royal Highness," he said carefully. "You're not the one who will be answering questions today." The words carried weight. Quiet. Absolute. Two more guards stepped forward, one offering bottled water, the other holding a clean towel. Hale guided Charlotte gently toward a waiting bench beneath the arch, keeping himself between her and Camilla as if it were instinct, not instruction. The pink rucksack, still sitting on the back seat, was retrieved and placed carefully beside her. A small detail, a necessary one. Her eyes flicked toward Camilla once, not anger, not fear, just silent disbelief. And in that moment, Hale understood something. This wasn't just about punishment, it was about control, and that control had just been broken. Charlotte didn't let go of Sergeant Hale's sleeve as they crossed the stone courtyard. Her fingers were still curled around the fabric with quiet desperation, even as Mason wrapped the thermal blanket around her shoulders. She was walking now, on her own, but only just. Each step felt like it needed permission, like she was afraid the next one would be taken from her. No one spoke. Not the driver. Not the staff watching from behind hedges, not the aides lingering at the far doors. The silence was absolute. Camilla remained near the car, arms folded tightly across her body, as if still trying to summon the version of herself that had control. "She's dramatic," she called, loud enough to carry but without strength. "This isn't what it looks like." Charlotte flinched slightly at the sound of her voice. "She's emotional. She wants attention." Charlotte turned slightly, her voice barely rising above the wind. "I tried not to cry." The words landed like a stone in water, soft but impossible to ignore. Even the guards behind her shifted where they stood. Hale didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He led her to the base of the west portico, shaded, quiet, away from the vehicle. She sat on the bench without protest, pulling the blanket tighter. Her knees tucked in, her eyes stayed on the ground. Mason knelt in front of her with the bottle of water. She took it in both hands and held it, but didn't drink. Camilla's voice came again, brittle now. She was lashing out. There was an incident last week. "Stop," Hale said, without looking back. The word wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a gavel. Camilla froze mid-sentence. "You can make your statements later," he continued, "but right now you say nothing. Not to her, not to us." Her mouth opened, then shut again. From the edge of the courtyard, senior security officials had begun to arrive. Not with ceremony, just the quiet, firm presence of rank. They didn't bark orders. They didn't draw weapons. They simply took position, read the situation, and understood immediately. The vehicle was inspected, the interior photographed, the boot rechecked. One of the guards recovered the small cassette player embedded in the rear floor, a detail Hale hadn't noticed earlier. Charlotte glanced up and spoke without prompting. She said it would play music, so I wouldn't feel lonely. Mason's hands tightened around the water bottle he was holding. Hale finally turned to the new arrivals. "Secure her. Escort her to Kensington. No announcement, no documentation until she's safe." "And Her Majesty?" one of them asked quietly. Hale didn't answer at first. Then, "Don't call her that in front of the child." And with that, Camilla was no longer part of the conversation, only part of the problem. The dark Range Rover entered through the east side gate, with no escort, no sirens, and no fanfare. Just the smooth glide of silence giving way. Sergeant Rowan Hale saw it the moment it crossed the threshold. The windows were tinted, but the plate was familiar, not ceremonial, not diplomatic, personal. The rear door opened before the vehicle fully stopped. Prince William stepped out alone, no aides. No entourage, just him. Sleeves rolled, jaw tight, eyes already scanning the courtyard. He saw the car first, then the guards, then Camilla, standing stiff, isolated, unspeaking, then his daughter. Charlotte was still seated beneath the archway, knees drawn in, blanket wrapped around her shoulders like armor. Mason knelt beside her. Hale stood nearby, unmoving. William didn't speak. He walked straight toward her, not in a rush, not delaying, just one foot in front of the other, absorbing what he was seeing with each step. When he reached her, she looked up, and the faintest crack broke through her composure. "Papa!" One word, one syllable, but it carried all the weight of what had been done. William knelt without hesitation and took her into his arms, not a show of comfort, a shield, his coat wrapped around her, his hand behind her head. The embrace didn't last long. It didn't need to. When he stood, something had shifted in his face, not rage, not sorrow, focus. He turned slowly. Camilla stepped forward, relief flashing across her expression, like she was about to seize control again. "William, He raised one hand. She stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. He turned to Hale. "What happened?" Hale didn't embellish. He didn't posture. "I stopped a child from being punished inside a trunk." The words were simple, but they shattered something. William didn't flinch. He looked at the vehicle, at the boot still ajar, at the thermal blanket around Charlotte's shoulders. He didn't ask for evidence. He didn't ask for clarification because he didn't need it. Behind him, the security detail remained still, awaiting instruction, awaiting temperature. William turned slightly, just enough to glance at Camilla, the woman his children were taught to respect. But he didn't speak to her. Not yet. His gaze returned to Hale. A long pause, then a single nod. That was all. No royal decree, no public spectacle, just a prince acknowledging the guard who'd done what no one else had. Camilla took a slow, deliberate step forward. Her voice was softer now, her posture less certain. "You're choosing him over the crown." William turned his head toward her. Not fast, not sharp. Just enough for the silence to press harder. He looked at her without blinking. "I'm choosing my daughter over cruelty." There was no rebuttal to that. Camilla's mouth parted, but nothing came out. For the first time since the car arrived, she looked smaller than the space around her, as if the very title she carried no longer fit. Charlotte remained seated, now sipping from the water bottle Mason had offered her. Her eyes followed her father, but she didn't speak again. She didn't need to. Her presence, bound minutes ago, silenced in the dark, was louder than anything said. William walked toward her, kneeling again to touch her hand. "You're going home now, with people who won't let this happen again." She nodded, resting her cheek against his shoulder for just a moment before he helped her to her feet. The blanket still wrapped around her. She walked with him until two palace security officials took her hand gently and guided her toward the waiting escort. No blue lights, no sirens, just quiet, urgent motion. William watched her go, then turned to Sergeant Hale. "You acted alone?" Hale nodded. "I didn't wait for clearance." William studied him, gaze unreadable for a long moment. Then he said, without ornament, "Good." He stepped closer and placed a hand on Hale's shoulder. The briefest contact, but deliberate. A silent mark of recognition, of approval, of shared weight. Hale didn't react visibly. He simply nodded once. Camilla was still standing by the car, isolated, guarded only by her name. And even that had begun to feel like it belonged to someone else. She spoke again, voice cracking at the edges. "She embarrassed me in front of guests. It wasn't violent." "You duct-taped a child's mouth," William said without turning. "You tied her hands and hid her like luggage." "I didn't." "You did." His voice wasn't raised. "And you did it with calculation." Camilla looked to the other guards as if expecting someone to step in, to soften the blow. No one moved. She took a step toward William. "You don't understand what she's been like lately." "One more sentence," William said, "and I'll make sure every security feed from this courtyard is archived for committee review." Camilla froze. William turned again to Hale, this time addressing both him and the guards standing nearby. "Escort her to the green parlour. Remove her access to all transportation schedules. As of now, she does not move without senior royal sign-off." Camilla stared at him in stunned silence. And just like that, the shift was complete. She hadn't been dethroned. But the room, and the crown, no longer answered to her. The estate car sat motionless in the courtyard, trunk still open, its contents removed, its secrets exposed. The pink rucksack had been collected and zipped gently. The tape and cord, once wrapped around a child's limbs, now lay bagged and logged in evidence pouches, sealed, silent, undeniable. Camilla stood alone beside the vehicle. No handlers, no escorts. Her coat hung awkwardly around her shoulders, as if it no longer recognized its purpose. One gloved hand rested against the boot edge. The other clutched the chain of her handbag like a lifeline. No one approached her. No one defended her. Not even the driver, who stood several paces away, speaking quietly with internal security. Across the courtyard, Sergeant Rowan Hale had resumed his post beneath the arch, standing at ceremonial rest, boots planted firm, gloved hands behind his back. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. Everything that needed saying had already been said. Everything that mattered had already been seen. The air hung heavy, like it hadn't quite recovered from what it had witnessed. Even the pigeons atop the battlements remained still, as if the structure itself understood what had unfolded. Charlotte was gone now, safely transported out, wrapped in warmth and silence, her whereabouts known only to those who'd earned the right to know. William had disappeared into the south wing without further word. The doors had closed quietly behind him. Nothing public, nothing performative, just lines redrawn, unspoken, but unbreakable. Hale remained exactly where he was, eyes forward, shoulders square. It wasn't pride, it wasn't relief, it was duty. And for the first time in years, he felt the weight of his uniform not as tradition, but as protection. The kind that didn't flinch, the kind that didn't yield, the kind that, if necessary, opened the trunk. Should a royal guard break ranks, if it means saving a child from someone with absolute power? Was this discipline, or something far darker hiding behind royal privilege? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if you believe no title should ever place a child beyond protection, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss what really unfolds behind palace gates. Share this story with someone who still believes the crown is built on duty, not silence. And with our next royal moment already waiting on your screen, click through now, and we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place, for another story the palace never expected anyone to hear.